All right, welcome to our second session in this track where we're looking at FIDO deployment at scale to consumers. Microsoft was actually one of the first companies to allow end users to actually remove their password entirely, which is, we talk about passwordless, but sometimes when we talk about that, we mean not entering a password anymore, but actually there's still a password on the server. So we're talking about disabling passwords entirely, which is where we want to get to. So to detail their journey and what they've learned, I am very happy to have Scott Bingham and Emily Houlihan from Microsoft here to talk about their journey to passwordless.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for coming. Last year, Microsoft became the first major identity provider to completely remove the password. Are we up here? Yay! And we are very excited to share some of our learnings with you. My name is Scott Bingham. I'm a product manager on the identity team at Microsoft, and my primary focus is innovation and adoption in the consumer space. And I'm joined today with Emily.
Contrary to what the slide says, my name is Emily Houlihan. I'm a product manager and I focus on consumer account recovery experiences and credential management best practices.
So we went big last year and to delete the consumer password, but this has been a work in progress for several years. For decades, the familiar paradigm for end users is username and password. And passwords are a terrible solution for a lot of reasons. If you're at this conference, you probably know that. I won't belabor the point. But the fact is that they're deeply entrenched in both our users' psyche, muscle memory, patterns and habits, as well as our apps and services and the products that we produce. So several years ago, even if we wanted to just snap our fingers and delete the password, it wasn't practical. The infrastructure wasn't built, and the consumers weren't ready for it. So we're attacking passwords on both sides of the house. We have our consumer side and the enterprise side. But the road there is essentially the same, a few different steps. First, create those password replacement offerings. We spent years and months rolling out support for temporary one-time passwords, security keys, authenticator apps, Windows Hello, all these different replacement offerings. The next step is reduce user-visible password surface areas. Next, transition to that passwordless sign-in, get users comfortable with that, and then eliminate passwords completely from the identity directory. And I'll even add a fifth step on there that's not there, and we jump high into the sky, and that's just stop accruing them in the first place when we create net new accounts. And so while the consumer side reached the top of the mountain there first, the steps are the same. So Microsoft, again, became the first major identity provider to allow users to completely remove the password. And this is brand new frontier for us. We really wanted this to be a learning year. We were curious, how would this message resonate with our customers? What marketing and messaging would they react to? How could we effectively communicate this dramatic shift? 40, 50 years of computing and that muscle memory is changed now. So aside from our initial launch announcement, we refrained from any major marketing and like product interrupts promoting this feature. We wanted some organic growth. We wanted to see who would proactively seek this out. And as we collected data, I wanted to be able to pivot our product to really deliver the best customer experience possible. So what was the first step? Well, if you're going to remove your password, and that's the primary way you sign in, you have to replace it with something. So as I mentioned earlier, we spent years and months building out support for these other features. We have some really cool stuff on there. We have FIDO2 security keys, we have one-time passcodes, Windows Hello, authenticator apps. Each of these methods has some pros and cons, and we need to make sure our users were also in a stable place that if they should lose their primary authentication method, they should be able to recover their account. And Emily will talk a little bit about that in a minute. So some of our key learnings. First, consumer passwordless appetite is strong. It's incredibly strong. Before we launched, we put together a model. So based off the people who are using authenticator apps and security keys today, based on the number of our users who have proactively enabled multi-factor authentication. Where do we think this will be? And this graph here shows we did a bit of a soft launch. We launched the feature, slowly rolling it out. Didn't announce it at first, just to see who would kind of adopt it. A lot of this is internal Microsoft users from their own personal accounts. And then this yellow bar here is what we expected, our year-end goal. This is what our model said would happen. We hope we launched in summer, by the end of the year, we'd hit this yellow goal. So summer rolled around, we made a launch announcement. Within 2 days, we hit our goal. So we're absolutely shocked at the response. We honestly expected this to be kind of a niche feature. We weren't expecting people to throw away years of muscle memory and familiarity with that sign-in paradigm and replace that with things that are a little bit more difficult to understand, like authenticator apps and security keys that people who are not at this conference might have a little bit of trouble understanding intuitively. And the growth just kept coming. So this is our last year of growth. This is purely organic growth. Like I mentioned, we don't have any interrupts in product saying delete your password. You have to proactively go to your account settings and go through those steps and initiate that UX to delete your password. So that is our first key learning here, is that the customer response, the customer appetite is there.
Thanks, Scott. So this leads us to our second insight. Improved security is important, but the offering of improved user experience is critical. That's what's driving a bunch of the demand. So before I dig into the details, I want to start by asking, who are Microsoft's consumers? So we can bucket our customers into two basic categories: those who are casual and are highly security conscious users. We look at highly security conscious users and ask, have they enabled two-step verification? Have they demonstrated any interest in other security-minded products? And they make up less than 2% of our monthly active user base. So casual users are 98%, the vast majority of our customers. And we had a theory when we first rolled out Passwordless, or the ability to delete your password. And we expected that those security-conscious users were going to be the ones who were most interested in delete password functionality. But when we actually looked at those who started the delete your password flow, we found that the highly security-conscious customers were overrepresented. So they made up about 28% of the overall demand. But we were really shocked to see that casual users actually still made up 72% of people who went to the delete password flow. Now, as Scott mentioned, this is completely organic. These are people who are maybe going to credential management experiences for the very first time because they heard about the offering to delete their password and they think it's really exciting. Maybe they don't know exactly what they're going to do in order to delete their password, but they know that they can move to a better future. So I've shared with you the good news, that there's demand from all across the user base. But there is a little bit more sobering news. When we actually look at users who finish deleting their passwords, we see a somewhat more familiar picture. Our highly security conscious set of customers are the ones who end up successfully deleting their passwords. They make up about 55% of those who finish the flow. Now, our casual users still make up about 45% of the people who actively deleted their passwords. We think that this is really, really great. But why did they go from 72% who started the flow to only finishing and making up about 45% of people who completed it? This leads us to our third insight, which is that delete password success rate is highly susceptible to friction. So before I get into the specifics, I want to talk about the requirements that we have for users before they can delete their password. We want to make sure that all of our customers have the ability to successfully authenticate and recover if they ever lose access to some of their authentication methods. So starting with people who have two-step verification enabled, we have 3 requirements. The first is that they have the Microsoft Authenticator app in order to do their primary authentication. We then require that they have at least 2 other alternative contact methods. The first being email or SMS, and then our third requirement is that they have email, SMS, or another security key, Windows Hello, or something like that. The reason why we have these requirements is so if a user ever loses access to one authentication method, they can still regain access to their account and continue to authenticate or add new ones. Now, for users who have two-step verification disabled, we have slightly fewer requirements. We still require the Microsoft Authenticator app, but we only require that a user has one of email or SMS in order to do recovery. So why require the Authenticator? Well, when we actually break down the set of authentication methods that are available to our customers, we have things that are kind of in the single-factor authentication space. Passwords, which we obviously are getting rid of as part of this feature, and then single-factor authentications like one-time code sent to SMS or email. But when we start looking at the strong authentication methods that are available to our consumers, we think that Authenticator strikes a really great balance with our passwordless phone sign-in, which is inherently multi-factor auth. Now, we still have our strongest authentication methods, so those include FIDO security keys, smart cards, Windows Hello, but the reason why we didn't require users adopt these authentication methods in order to delete their password is because there are some downsides in current implementation. Windows Hello doesn't roam across different devices, especially if you're authenticating in mobile scenarios, and there's a cost associated with smart cards and security keys. We wanted the ability to delete your password to work for all customers and not have to involve financial investment. And we are able to build some better security features into the Authenticator authentication experience. So that involves things like code matching to reduce inadvertent MFA or inadvertent prompts, and also provide context for where a user is signing into, give them a sense of where requests are coming from, and what app they're signing into to reduce phishing risk. And there's more improvements coming to the Authenticator over time. But so I've given you a sense of what actually is required in order for users to delete their password. So if a user goes into the account management settings, basically they can hit a little toggle that says, hey, I want to go delete my password. And then we do an eligibility check. Basically, do they meet the set of criteria that I talked about before? And what we found is that for the set of users who were eligible, about 40% of our customers, they just had to approve one test notification to their Authenticator, and they were good to go. And those users tended to be pretty successful. But we did find that about 60% of our customers needed to have another way to sign in, so basically to accrue an additional credential. When we looked at the data, there were two sets of errors that people ran into. About 10% of customers needed to accrue an additional email or phone number, and when they hit that error, they resolved that about 50% of the time. But about 90% of people who were ineligible needed to accrue the Authenticator app and actually go download the app and get that set up before they could approve the request. For the folks who hit that error, we saw about a 10% resolution rate. So we've learned that when users are in a state where they can easily delete their password, they have the right set of credentials available, they're pretty successful. But we can take steps to accrue some of these alternative authentication methods prior to actually entering into the delete password flow. So we started to ask ourselves, where can we accrue additional auth methods? One of the best places to do that is at account creation. So we're thinking about doing things like for users who are going through sign up in critical product funnels, having Authenticator enrollment actually happen during the sign up funnel. There are also opportunities throughout the life cycle of the account to continue engaging on accruing additional authentication methods. So that it can involve moments like account security checkups, or where a user might see in-product prompts to go and actively engage with some of their settings. But the other two scenarios, big reveal, are things like new device onboarding, where they can easily add a passwordless authentication method, or scenarios like reset or change password. A user's already going through the pain of forgetting their password and is really aware of the challenges associated with that experience. It's a really great time to offer or upsell something that could be a little bit better. So those are some of the insights that we've learned, and I'm going to hand it over to Scott to summarize what's next.
Okay, thanks. I'll take that. Yeah, so to recap. First, consumer passwordless appetite is strong. Make sure you have your fundamentals in place, and then move forward. Your customers are anxious and ready for it. A second is that security is important, and that is a message that will resonate. But for consumers, the improved UX is critical. Emily showed that with our casual consumers ready for that passwordless. Even if we achieve a perfect type of authentication credential that's perfectly secure, if the experience isn't easier than what they're doing today with a password or a password manager, you're going to face adoption obstacles. And the third insight is that the delete password success rate is highly susceptible to friction. So what's next? Well, one of the first things that we're doing is we're re-evaluating the requirements to delete your password. Today, the Authenticator app is required, as well as having another alternative contact method like email or SMS. But we're observing that friction, getting users to download and be comfortable with an Authenticator app. But what if there was another method that would allow users to authenticate securely and safely and also survive device loss? Yay, passkeys. We're very excited about passkeys. Passkeys or multi-device FIDO credentials are a really compelling solution that we would like to offer alongside our Authenticator app. A passkey is a FIDO credential that can be synced through a platform cloud and available to use on all your devices that are signed into the same platform account. For example, you can enroll a passkey on an Android phone with your face, your fingerprint, your device PIN, and then that cred is immediately available on any other Android device that is signed into the same Google account. They're incredibly simple to enroll. Face scan, fingerprint, device PIN, and they're incredibly easy to use. It's the same action. It's an action that our users are familiar with. And they survive device loss. They have all the advantages of phishing resistance and recoverability. We'll have some more sessions about passkeys tomorrow. I'll be doing a passkey in FIDO, and then there's another one by Christian Brand from Google. I encourage you to visit those sessions if you'd like to learn more about passkeys. The other thing that we're looking at really carefully are these high propensity pivot points. Where are users most likely to want to delete their password? And some of these Emily mentioned earlier, like where a user is already in that mindset of account configuration or device configuration when they're enrolling a new device. Also, we think it's a really important point to engage with our customers when they're frustrated with the password. So like the password reset page. If they've forgotten their password, they're locked out, they're trying to solve for that, we get them authed up, and then we say, what if you never had to do that again? And we invite them to enroll a passkey or download the Authenticator app and delete their password there. So we're really excited about what the next year will bring, and I hope this has really been helpful and inspiring to you, and we'd like to take your questions now if you have any questions.
Thank you. So just to address the weird elephant in the room, there was a little bit of corruption in the slides, Emily and Scott's slides, which I'm going to go ahead and take responsibility for. But what we're going to do is ensure that we drop the clean ones in the on-demand version. So you can go back and watch the clean slides without any of that. That wasn't on purpose. They weren't putting hieroglyphics in their slides. But I really do appreciate your willingness to really roll with that. So we appreciate that. Sorry about that. So we'll take some questions. We do have some time for questions. One question that I had in the app was, so we just listened to a great presentation from Ian Glazer from Salesforce, who said, first personal lesson, hire a writer. Is there anything that you could share regarding how you're presenting the option, like a best practice or lessons learned, and how you present that option to your users to entice them to want to turn off the password?
Sure. One that I shared earlier is that user experience is critical. And so we're seeing that that safety is something that's important to our customers, but the ease of use is really starting to resonate with our customers. I think part of that is because customers don't always think about that security until after it's been a problem. But the hassle of passwords and traditional MFA is ever present on their minds. So I'd encourage you, if you're doing A/B testing, have two. One that is a security promise and one that is an ease of use promise, and see which one resonates better. With our customers, it's been really inspiring to see they're looking for that ease of use, that improved user experience of never having to deal with a password again.
I'll come to you. We have a question.
Hi, I just want to ask a quick question. Have you ever seen an attempt to weaponize basically this delete password flow? Like an attacker gets an access to an account, and in order to lock the original owner back out, they would delete the password to gain exclusive access to the account. Has this ever happened, and what steps have you taken to prevent that?
I'll take that one.
Sure. So the compromise of accounts happens most frequently when a password is compromised, and we have kind of built-in protections to try to ensure that a compromised credential from a password perspective does not lead to full account takeover. But in terms of actually seeing users compromised directly through the delete password flow, we haven't seen any larger attack vectors through that approach than than scenarios in which a user's credentials have been compromised beyond their password. Attackers will go in and just change the password, and effectively that's the same vector. So we haven't seen any novel attacks in this particular scenario. We're continuing to investigate and continuing to monitor. I think that's one of the reasons why Scott mentioned that we started this experience without a huge amount of fanfare, because we're continuing to learn and look at the different patterns that both our users and bad actors are taking.
Can I ask someone to help me out with just for the stream? Just for the stream.
Hey there, just a quick question. You mentioned how you had a lot of drop-off of people who were trying to delete their password. I wonder, do you guys try any strategies to try to re-engage with those customers who, just decided to give up halfway through the experience?
Yeah, that's a really important one, because those are people who are already ripe for it, right? They already proactively went and wanted to delete their password. So we have some ideas floating around about re-engagement. Looking for people who have failed out of that flow for one reason or other, especially when passkeys come on board, saying, hey, look, it's easy. It's a scan of your face, it's a tap, it's a device pin. So yeah, we definitely have intentions to run some experiments in our next phase of this deployment, yeah.
I'm kind of curious, after you migrated all these people away from passwords, about the account recovery support that you needed to provide. I mean, what that experience has been like, what the volume's been like, how you made that as frictionless as possible, but yet secure.
Yeah, I can tackle that. So we have not seen giant support drivers from these experiences. As I mentioned, kind of ensuring that users have the right set of authentication methods available to them has led to a lot of mitigations. But we do have some account recovery experiences that allow users to do things like use time as a second factor to get back into their account. And we're kind of constantly evolving those flows as we're looking at them and trying to understand how we can ensure that people can recover if they do lose access to more than one particular authentication method, while still preventing some of those account compromise or account takeover scenarios that we were concerned about.
Okay, we do have time for a few more questions. If I hustle over there.
Do your use cases include automation yet, or like non-human type accounts, or is it only for human accounts right now?
Yeah, this is for our consumer account business, so human accounts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more.
Are you able to share any quantitative metrics that you may have used to show success, whether it's cost reduction for support or attacks thwarted or anything else?
Can't share specifics, but some things we are tracking specifically are metrics specifically associated with password reset, for example. Those are very expensive. There's some studies that talk about $70, $75 it costs a company to reset a password if a person goes through past like our, we call our auto, auto CSR, auto customer service. So we're looking at password reduction calls. We're also looking for cost of goods for SMS, which is very expensive. So those are two that we're looking at. And then the third, oh, sorry, was it specifically for cost reduction or just success metrics? Success metrics. Also for, account compromise we're looking at very carefully, and then account sign-in success. Those are some of the ones we're tracking really, really closely.
All right, so please join me in thanking Emily and Scott for a great presentation. Thank you so much.